Welcome to the first episode of Future Friendly Food Podcast. I am Robert Egg.
You are not.
That's true. You got me there. And this is Annika. You know,
Hello.
my parents really had a sense of humor.
Hey, good.
Naming their son Egg and all that. Like they knew I'd end up hosting a podcast about food.
Well, at least you have a name that's relevant to the topic.
That's true. I'm embracing it. I'm going to lean into it.
Good.
What about you? Stuck with a name that sounds like you should be studying ancient Greek philosophy, not ant agriculture.
Yeah, and I can really go for a toga party right about now.
Maybe you could rebrand yourself as Annika the Ant Whisperer.
I think I'll stick to my day job for now.
Okay, fair enough. So are we really going to talk about how humans invented farming? Because, spoiler alert, we didn't.
We really didn't. It's one of those human myths that needs to be busted.
Humans, always eager to take credit for everything.
It's kind of our thing, isn't it?
It is. We invented agriculture. More like we stumbled upon it after watching ants do it for millions of years.
Exactly. Turns out those tiny creatures crawling around your kitchen,
I hate those things.
they are the real agricultural pioneers. They've been farming fungus for about 66 million years, since way back when the dinosaurs called it quits.
66 million years.
Okay.
That's mind-boggling. And to think, I can't even keep a basil plant alive on my windowsill.
Don't feel bad. Most humans haven't quite mastered the whole sustainable farming thing.
There's that buzzword again, sustainable. Like we think we invented the concept.
Right, like ants haven't been doing it successfully for millions of years.
They've been doing it quietly. No fancy marketing campaigns required.
Just pure, unadulterated, six-legged sustainability.
So tell me, what's the secret to their success?
Well, for starters, they're team players.
They're not like us.
Not at all. Their entire society is built on collaboration and specialized roles. Every ant contributes to the collective good, working together to ensure the survival of the colony.
It's kind of terrifying, actually.
It is like a highly organized, extremely efficient insect army.
Except their weapon of choice is fungus.
That's right, their battle strategy. Sustainable agriculture.
Fungus as a weapon. Now, that's a food fight I wouldn't want to get caught in. How do they even do it? I mean, I've seen anthills. They don't exactly scream sophisticated agriculture.
Though you clearly haven't met the leafcutter ants.
I try to avoid them at all costs.
It's understandable, but they are the ultimate fungus farming pros.
It's life.
These guys have these massive underground cities where millions of ants work together to harvest leaves and cultivate their fungal crops.
We've got our ants, as in they literally cut leaves and carry them back to their nests.
Yep. It's like a perfectly choreographed ballet of agricultural efficiency, but with more mandibles and less tutus.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. For ants, at least.
Impressive is an understatement. They don't just carry the leaves, they use them as a substrate to grow their fungus.
Yeah.
They got these elaborate chambers where they carefully control temperature, humidity, and even weed out competing fungi. They're basically tiny, six-legged farmers with a green thumb.
Or maybe a green antenna.
You got it. So it's like an ant version of the Martian, but with mushrooms instead of potatoes.
And a lot more teamwork.
Way more teamwork. And the scale is mind-blowing. These ant colonies can stretch for acres with millions of individuals working together to maintain their fungal gardens. If a level of agricultural organization that makes human efforts look like, well, a disorganized mess.
Which, let's be honest, they often are.
We could learn a thing or two from these ants.
We really could. We try to control nature with our pesticides and fertilizers, while ants are out there working with it, creating these intricate, balanced ecosystems. It's humbling, to say the least.
Humbling and a little embarrassing, considering we like to call ourselves the intelligent species.
Right, as if sustainability is some new concept we invented.
Ants are out there living the truly sustainable life, no marketing required.
So these ants, they're fungus farming experts. But do they actually, eat the fungus? Or is it more of a decorative thing?
Oh, they eat it all right. It's their primary food source, packed with nutrients, and provides everything the colony needs to thrive. Talk about a truly local farm-to-table diet.
Okay, so ants are surprisingly good at farming fungus. Do they ever get tired of mushrooms? I mean, even the most dedicated foodie needs a little variety, right?
Well, it turns out not all ants are strictly fungus farmers.
Or not.
Nope. Some have branched out into plant cultivation.
Plant cultivation? Ants as gardeners? This just keeps getting weirder and weirder.
It all gets weirder. There's this fascinating example with Fijian ants. They've evolved to completely rely on these squamalaria plants for housing. Over time, they actually lost the ability to build their own nests.
Wait, seriously, they forgot how to build their own homes because they're so dependent on these plants.
Yep. Talk about putting all your eggs in one basket, or should I say one plant pot.
That's both impressive and kind of sad, like they outsourced their housing needs and lost the skills in the process.
It's a risky strategy for sure, but it's worked for them for a long time. Eve ants are incredibly dedicated to their squamalaria plants. They plant the seeds, fertilize the plants, and fiercely protect them from any threats. They're basically live-in gardeners, except their entire house is made of the plants they tended.
That's actually pretty cool. I mean, imagine living in a house made of your favorite food, or at least a house that provides your favorite food.
Wait,
Though I guess it would have to be a pretty big house if it's also housing millions of your closest ant buddies.
that's true. Yeah, real estate can get pretty crowded.
That's part one of our deep dive into the amazing world of ant agriculture. We'll be back after a short break to explore even more of their fascinating farming practices. Stay tuned.
So these Pidgin ants, they're not just content with being landlords to their squamalaria tenants.
They're not. What else are they up to?
They've got a side hustle going, they've mastered the art of symbiosis, forming complex partnerships with a whole host of other organisms.
Symbiosis, like that whole clownfish living in the anemone thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe a little less glamorous.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of ants and whatever crawls around the dirt with them.
You're not wrong. But while it might not be winning any underwater beauty contests, ant symbiosis is incredibly fascinating. They've got these intricate partnerships with aphid mealybugs, even butterfly larvae. It's like a whole ecosystem built on mutually beneficial relationships, or as humans like to call it, networking.
So ants are basically the ultimate social climbers. Except instead of fancy cocktail parties, they're hanging out with aphids and caterpillars.
Pretty much. It's all about who you know, even in the insect world.
I guess so. And one of the most common examples of this ant social scene is their relationship with aphids or mealybugs.
Wait, you know how humans herd livestock for food and resources? Ants do something similar with these sap-sucking insects.
Wait, so the ants are basically ranchers, herding aphids for their sugary secretions.
They are. The ants protect the aphids from predators, move into the best feeding spots, and even milk them for their honeydew. It's like a miniature dairy farm ant style.
So we talking full-blown domestication here. Have the ants genetically modified their aphids to be better honeydew producers?
Hold your horses. While the relationship is incredibly close, it's not quite the same as domestication as we understand it. There's no evidence that the ants have actually altered the aphids genetically.
So maybe sustainable ranching is a better term. Though I'm sure there's some ant equivalent of a factory farm out there somewhere churning out honeydew at an alarming rate.
You might be surprised at just how complex these relationships can get. Some ant-aphid partnerships have actually evolved into parasitic relationships where one species benefits at the expense of the other.
See,
I knew there had to be a catch. Even in the perfect world of nature, there's always someone exploiting someone else. Maybe we're not so different from those ants after all. Perhaps not. But before we get too cynical, let's talk about another fascinating ant partnership, their relationships with Lepidoptera larvae, aka caterpillars.
caterpillars, those fuzzy little eating machines that decimate my garden. What could ants possibly want with those guys?
You'd be surprised. Some ant species have evolved to protect certain caterpillar species in exchange for sugary secretions or other nutritious rewards. It's like a bodyguard service for picky ears.
Okay, so ants are protecting caterpillars from predators in exchange for food. It's like a tiny mafia operation, except with less violence and more honeydew.
Something like that. And these caterpillars have even evolved special adaptations to make themselves more appealing to the ants. Things like thick skin to withstand ant bites, special organs for producing sounds that attract ants, or even the ability to mimic ant pheromones.
Wow, there's some serious dedication to getting those ant bodyguards. It's like they're offering an all-you-can-eat honeydew buffet in exchange for protection. Talk about a sweet deal.
Literally, it's a fascinating example of how nature finds these intricate ways for different species to cooperate, even when it seems completely counterintuitive.
And to think humans struggle to cooperate with each other, let alone other species. Maybe we need to take a page out of the ant playbook, although I'm not sure I'm ready to start milking aphids or offering protection to caterpillars in exchange for sugary snacks.
Maybe not, but the point is ants have a lot to teach us about collaboration, resource management, and finding win-win solutions. They've been doing it for millions of years, and they're not even charging us consulting fees.
That's a good point. We could all use a little free advice these days, especially when it comes to sustainable living. Though after learning about all these complex ant relationships, I'm starting to think maybe sustainable is just a fancy word for figuring out how to get what you need without completely destroying everything in the process.
Well, you might be on something there.
Maybe I should trademark that sustainable. Figuring out how to get what you need without completely destroying everything in the process. I can see it now on t-shirts, coffee mugs, maybe even a billboard or two.
I'll take a mud.
Okay, so we've got ants farming fungus, cultivating plants, running aphid ranches, and forming alliances with caterpillars and fungi. Is there anything these tiny creatures can't do?
Well, they haven't quite mastered podcasting yet.
Good point. And when they do figure it out, I'm sure their episode on sustainable agriculture for 66 million years will be a real hit. They'll surely have some pretty harsh critiques of our human efforts, though.
I'd definitely tune in for that.
So this deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the incredible world of ant agriculture. It's amazing how these tiny creatures have been quietly running complex, sustainable food systems for millions of years. It makes our human efforts seem, well, a little less impressive.
Don't even say less impressive, just different. And maybe a little less sustainable when you really think about it.
True. But before we spiral into an existential crisis about the futility of human endeavors, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked a lot about what ants are doing, but what can we actually learn from them? I mean, besides the obvious, don't underestimate tiny creatures with a penchant for fungus.
That's a good place to start. But there's a lot more to glean from these six-legged agricultural experts. They offer us a glimpse into alternative models of food production models that are inherently resilient and, dare I say, sustainable.
Alternative models, you say? I'm all ears. Although I have to admit, the thought of humans adopting ant-style farming practices is a little unsettling. Imagine rows of aphids instead of corn giant mushroom farms in every backyard, and humans diligently tending to their caterpillar herds. It's a strange and slightly creepy vision of the future.
I'll admit it's not the most glamorous picture.
No, probably not. But if we get past the ick factor, there's a lot we can learn from these little guys, right?
Right, there is. Let's say you're willing to embrace the ant-inspired future.
Okay, I'm open to it. Where do we even begin? Do we all need to start digging elaborate underground farms and forming symbiotic relationships with insects?
It's not quite that simple.
Oh.
We can't just copy and paste ant solutions onto human problems. We need to adapt and innovate, finding ways to apply these lessons to our own unique challenges.
So you're saying no ant-powered farms anytime soon?
Yeah,
It's kind of hoping for a robot ant that could do all my gardening for me.
I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. But the principles behind ant agriculture, collaboration, diversity, efficiency, resilience, those are all things we can and should be striving for in our own food systems.
It's like using ant agriculture as a source of inspiration, a blueprint for a more sustainable future.
Exactly. Although, as we've established, sustainable is a bit of a loaded term. Maybe it's more about recognizing that we're part of the larger ecosystem and our actions have consequences.
Yeah,
We can't just keep taking without giving back or exploiting without considering the long-term impact.
you start to sound like a nature documentary narrator. But I get your point. Ants have figured out how to thrive within their environment, working with it instead of against it. We, on the other hand, seem determined to bend nature to our will, even if it means destroying it in the process.
Yeah, it's not exactly our best look, is it? But hey, we're still a relatively young species, at least in agricultural terms. We've only been farming for a few thousand years compared to ants, millions of years of experience.
And it's true.
Maybe we just need a little more time to evolve.
Or maybe we just need to be more humble, admit that we don't have all the answers, and start paying attention to the creatures who've been doing this whole sustainable living thing for far longer than we have. Who knows? Maybe we can even pick up some tips on teamwork and community building while we're at it.
Now you're talking. Imagine a world where humans cooperate as effectively as an ant colony. We could achieve amazing things.
Or maybe just figure out how to feed ourselves without destroying the planet in the process. Baby steps, right?
Baby steps indeed.
So folks, that's our deep dive into the incredible world of ant agriculture. It's been a mind-boggling journey full of surprises, insights, and a healthy dose of ant envy. Who knew those tiny creatures were such agricultural geniuses?
And hopefully it's left you with a newfound appreciation for the complexity and ingenuity of the natural world.
And maybe, just maybe, it's given you some food for thought about how we can create a more, dare I say, sustainable food system for ourselves. Even it means taking inspiration from a bunch of six-legged fungus farming aphid herding insects.
Until next time, keep those ant lessons in mind. And remember, even the smallest creatures can teach us the biggest lessons.
This is Robert Egg signing off. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We're out of here, but the ants are still hard at work building their sustainable empires one tiny mushroom at a time. And hey, maybe one day we'll be right there with them.